All right. How was your day today? 네, 오랜만입니다. Today I'm going to be reading chapter 24. Miss Stacy and her pupils get up a concert. It was October again when Anne was ready to go back to school. A glorious October, all red and gold, with mellow mornings when the valleys were filled with delicate mists, as if the spirit of autumn had poured them in for the sun to drain. Amethyst, pearl, silver, rose, and smoke blue. The dews were so heavy that the fields glistened like cloth of silver, and there were such heaps of rustling leaves in the hollows of many-stemmed woods to run crisply through. The birch path was a canopy of yellow, and the ferns were sere and brown all along it. There was a tang in the very air that inspired the hearts of small maidens tripping, unlike snails, swiftly and willingly to school, and it was jolly to be back again at the little brown desk beside Diana, with Ruby Gillis nodding across the aisle, and Carrie Sloane sending up notes, and Julie Bell passing a chew of gum down from the back seat. Anne drew a long breath of happiness as she sharpened her pencil and arranged her picture cards in her desk. Life was certainly very interesting. Alright, 여기 mellow mornings 무슨 뜻일까요? 네, 너무 춥지도 않고 너무 덥지도 않고. 그리고 the ferns were sere and brown all along it. sere는 뭘 되게 빨리 굽다라는 뜻인데 원래는 이게 동사로 쓰여요. 그런데 여기서는 noun으로 썼네요. 명사로요. In the new teacher, she found another true and helpful friend. Miss Stacy was a bright, sympathetic young woman with the happy gift of winning, holding the affections of her pupils, and bringing out the best mentally and morally. 네, 여기서 happy gift를 가지고 있다 그랬어요. gift 여기서는 선물이 아니라 재능입니다. 어떤 재능을 갖고 있을까요? Miss Stacy는 학생들에게서 그들의 애정을 이기고 그냥 한번 얻는 게 아니라 얻고 가지고 있는 재능이 있었어요. 그리고 그들에게서 정신적으로 그리고 도덕적으로 그러니까 행동을 아주 잘하게끔 최고의 행동과 생각을 꺼집어내는데 재능이 있었습니다. Anne expanded like a flower under this wholesome influence and carried home to the admiring Matthew and the critical Marilla glowing 적으로 이를 붙여서 부르는 것 같아요. We had recitations this afternoon. I just wish you could have been there to hear me recite Mary Queen of Scots. I just put my whole soul into it. Ruby Gillis told me coming home that the way I said the line, "Now for my father's arm," she said, "my woman's heart farewell," just made her blood run cold. 네, blood run cold는 피가 원래는 따뜻하잖아요, 그렇죠? 그런데 blood run cold, 차갑게 됐다는 거는 소름이 끼쳤다. 되게 오싹하게 무서워서가 아니라 감동이었다는 거죠. Well, now, you might recite it for me some of these days out in the barn, suggested Matthew. Of course I will, said Anne meditatively, but I won't be able to do it so well, I know. It won't be so exciting as it is when you have a whole schoolful before you, breathlessly on your words, hanging breathlessly on your words. I know I won't be able to make your blood run cold. Mrs. Lynde says it made her blood run cold to see the boys climbing the very tops of those big trees on Bell's Hill after crow's nests last Friday, said Marilla. 네, blood run cold라고 얘기를 했더니 Marilla도 그 표현을 가지고 Mrs. Lynde도 오싹했대. 그 남자애들이 그 큰 나무 꼭대기로 가는 걸 보고. So 여기서 On Bell's Hill after crow's nests last Friday. after라는 뜻이 무슨 뜻일까요? 네, after는 원래는 뭐뭐 후에라는 뜻이지만 여기서는 뭐뭐 후에가 아니라 after crow's nests. crow, 까마귀의 둥지를 가지러 올라간 걸 보고 오싹했대요. 오케이, 여기서는 after가 who란 뜻이 아닙니다. 뭐뭘 가지기 위해서란 뜻입니다. I wonder at Miss Stacy for encouraging it. But we wanted a crow's nest for nature study, explained Anne. That was on our field afternoon. Field afternoons are splendid, Marilla, and Miss Stacy explains everything so beautifully. We have to write compositions on our field afternoons, and I write the best ones. 네, 무슨 뭘 이렇게 글을 쓰는 걸 얘기하는 거예요. 자기가 제일 잘 쓴대요. It's very vain of you to say so then. You'd better let your teacher say it. 아, 그렇게 자기 자신에 대해서 최고라 그러는 거는 너무 자만하는 거야. 너무 허영심을 가지는 거야. 그랬더니 선생님이 얘기를 해야지. But she did say it, Marilla. And indeed, I'm not vain about it. 나는 그거에 대해서 자만심을 갖지 않았어요. How can I be when I'm such a dunce at geometry? 내가 기하학을 그렇게 못하는데 어떻게 글 쓰는 거에 대해서, 글 잘 쓰는 거에 대해서 자만을 할 수가 있겠어요? Although I'm really beginning to see it through it a little too. Miss Stacy makes it so clear. Still, I'll never be good at it, and I assure you it is a humbling reflection. But I love writing compositions. Mostly, Miss Stacy lets us choose our own subjects. But next week, we're to write a composition on some remarkable person. It's hard to choose among so many remarkable people who have lived. 네, 뭐에 대해서 쓴대요? 아주 너무 멋진 사람, 훌륭한 사람. Mustn't it be splendid to be remarkable and have compositions written about you after you're dead? Oh, I would dearly love to be remarkable. I think when I grow up, I'll be a trained nurse and go with the Red Crosses to the field of battle as a messenger of mercy. That is, if I don't go out as a foreign missionary. That would be very romantic, but one would have to be very good to be a missionary, and that would be a stumbling block. We have physical culture exercises every day, too. 네, physical culture는 여기서는 네, 운동 수업을 얘기를 하는 거죠. 지금 요새는 physical culture라고 하지 않고 physical education이라고 합니다. They make you graceful and promote digestion. Promote fiddlesticks, said Marilla, who honestly thought it was all nonsense. 네, 그렇게 운동하는 거는 쓸데없다고 생각을 했던 거죠. But all the field afternoons and recitation Fridays and physical culture contortions paled before a project which Miss Stacy brought forward in November. This was that the scholars of Avonlea School should get up a concert and hold it in the hall on Christmas night for the laudable purpose of helping to pay for a schoolhouse flag. 네, 크리스마스 밤에 무슨 일이 있을 건가요? Concert. 왜? laudable, 칭찬할 만한 목표. 무슨 목표? 학교의 국기를 살려고. The pupils, one and all, taking graciously to this plan, the preparations for a program were begun at once. And all of the excited performers-elect, none was so excited as Anne Shirley, who threw herself into the undertaking heart and soul, hampered as she was by Marilla's disapproval. Marilla thought it all rank foolishness. 네, 여기서 performers-elect라고 했는데요. performer는 perform 연기하는 사람? 레이첼님 안녕하세요. 네, 오랜만에 했습니다. 네. performer는 뭘까요? 연기하는 사람은 아니고 연기 혹은 노래 이런 거 하는 게 performer인데 elect는 선출된. 그러니까 우리 president elect 했을 때는 대통령 되기 전에 부르는 게 president elect. President elect Mr. President elect Biden. 네, 바이든이라고 부를 수 있죠. 그러니까 대통령 됐을 때는 Mr. President지만 대통령 선출은 됐지만 아직 시작 안 했을 때는 elect라고 합니다. It's just filling your heads up with nonsense and taking time that ought to be put on your lessons, she grumbled. I don't approve of children's getting up concerts and racing about to practices. It makes them vain and forward and fond of gadding. 네, 왜 이런 콘서트 하는 거를 approve하지 않는다고요? 너무 vain 뭐였지? 허영, 자만해지고 forward, 나대고, and fond of gadding. 아주 gadding이 나대는 거고 forward는 너무 주제 파악을 못하고 그냥 너무 막 네, 겸손하지 못한다는 거죠. But think of the worthy object, pleaded Anne. A flag will cultivate a spirit of patriotism, Marilla. patriotism은 애국심을 만들 수 있다는 거죠. 국기를 하게 되면. Fudge! There's precious little patriotism in the thoughts of any of you. All you want is a good time. 아이고, 애국심 좋아하시네. 그냥 재미를 원하는 거지. Well, when you combine patriotism and fun, isn't it all right? Of course, it's real nice to be getting up a concert. We're going to have 6 choruses, and Diana's to sing a solo. I'm in 2 dialogues, the Society for the Suppression of Gossip and the Fairy Queen. The boys are going to have a dialogue too, and I'm to have 2 recitations, Marilla. I just tremble when I think of it, but it's a nice thrilly kind of tremble. 네, 너무 생각만 해도 떨리는데 thrilly kind of nice thrilly kind of tremble. 신나는 좋은 떨림이래요. And we're to have a tableau at the last. Faith, hope, and charity. Diana and Ruby and I are to be in it, all draped in white with flowing hair. I'm to be Hope with my hands clasped, so, and my eyes uplifted. 네, 여기서 so 했을 때는 이렇게 hands clasped 이렇게 될 거고, and my eyes uplifted 이렇게 눈은 이렇게 치켜 올릴 거래요. I'm going to practice my recitations in the garret. 다락방에서 연습할 거예요. Don't be alarmed if you hear me groaning. I have to groan heart-rendingly of them, and it's really hard to get up a good artistic groan, Marilla. 네. 혹은 막 되게 소리입니다. 네, 아주 가슴이 터질 듯이 그렇게 해야 되는데 너무 깜짝 놀라지 말라고. Josie Pye is sulky because she didn't get the part she wanted in the dialogue. She wanted to be the fairy queen. That would have been ridiculous, for who ever heard of a fairy queen as fat as Josie? 그렇게 뚱뚱한 fairy queen 보셨어요? Fairy queens must be slender. Jane Andrews is to be the queen, and I am to be one of her maids of honor. Josie says she thinks a red-haired fairy is just as ridiculous as a fat one, but I do not let myself mind what Josie says. I'm to have a wreath of white roses on my hair, and Ruby Gillis is going to lend me her slippers because I haven't any of my own. 네, 구두를 빌려주겠어요. Anne는 구두가 없어서. It's necessary for fairies to have slippers, you know. 그러니까 슬리퍼? 네, 완전히 구두는 아니고. 네, 슬리퍼는 일본어 맞죠? 네, 알리샤님 안녕하세요. You couldn't imagine a fairy wearing boots, could you? Especially with copper toes. We're going to decorate the hall with creeping spruce and fir mottos with pink tissue paper roses in them, and we're all to march in 2 by 2 after the audience is seated, while Emma White plays a march on the organ. 네, 둘씩 이렇게 서서 들어갈 거래요. Oh, Marilla, I know you're not so enthusiastic about it as I am, but don't you hope your little Anne will distinguish herself? 그렇게 내가 하는 거에 대해서 좋게 생각은 안 하시지만 당신의 귀여운 앤이 여기서 너무 잘해서 구별이 됐으면 좋겠지 않겠어요? 혹은 좀 뛰어났으면 좋겠지 않겠습니까? All I hope is that you'll behave yourself. I'll be heartily glad when all this fuss is over and you'll be able to settle down. You are simply good for nothing just now with your head stuffed full of dialogues and groans and tableaus. As for your tongue, it's a marvel it's not clean worn out. 네. 너의 혀가 완전히 하도 써서 떨어지지 않은 게 worn out. 너무 이게 허들어진 거지 않은 게 다행이다. Anne sighed and betook herself to the backyard, over which a young new moon was shining through the leafless poplar boughs from an apple-green western sky, and where Matthew was splitting wood. Anne perched herself on a block and talked the concert over with him, sure of an appreciative and sympathetic listener in this instance at least. Well, now, I reckon it's going to be a pretty good concert, and I expect you'll do your part fine, he said, smiling down into her eager, vivacious little face. Anne smiled back at him. Those two were the best of friends, and Matthew thanked his stars many a time and oft that he had nothing to do with bringing her up. 네, 여기서 무슨 뜻일까요? Matthew thanked his stars many a time and oft. 아주 많이 하늘에게 감사했습니다. 아주 많이 했고 그리고 자주. 뭐에 대해서? He had nothing to do with bringing her up. 그녀를 잘 키우는 거에 상관 안 해도 돼서. That was Marilla's exclusive duty. 네, Marilla에게만 주어진 일이었죠. If it had been his, he would have been worried over frequent conflicts between inclination and said duty. 네, 자기의 일이었더라면 항상 걱정을 했을 거래요. 뭐에 대해서? conflict. 자기의 하고 싶은 경향, 하고 싶은 성향, 의향과 자기의 duty, 자기가 해야 되는 책임과 이게 항상 conflict가 있어서. As it was, he was free to spoil Anne, Marilla's phrasing, as much as he liked. 네, spoil, 애를 버리다는 거죠. 너무 잘해줘서. But it was not such a bad arrangement after all. 하지만 그렇게 나쁜 마련은 아니었습니다. A little appreciation sometimes does quite as much good as all the conscientious bringing up in the world. 왜냐하면 나쁜 마련이 아니었어요. 왜냐? 너 아주 아이를 이뻐하고 하는 것들이 어쩔 때는 뭐만큼 효과가 좋다? 제대로 키우려고 아주 strict하게 이건 안 되고 막 무섭게 하는 것만큼 아이가 자라는 데 도움이 됐다는 거예요. Whew! Is my Korean getting a little better? What do you think? 좋아질 그게 안 보여요. Do we have any questions or comments? Alicia 님이 오늘 DM 주셔 가지고 제가 다시 이렇게 라방을 시작하게 됐습니다. Any questions or comments? 저에게도 한국말이 도움이 되기는 하는 것 같아요. All right. 여러분, thank you for watching. I will see you again next week. Next week is chapter 25, and it's a longer chapter. I love this chapter, 25. 25, 네, 되게 재밌는 챕터니까. 네, 다음 주에도 꼭 오세요. 네, thank you, 레이첼님. 그렇게 기다리시는 줄 몰랐네요. 네. 다음 주가 제가 되게 좋아하는 챕터예요. 네. 기대하셔도 될 것 같아요. All right. Thank you for coming, Rachel님, Alicia님. Good night. I'll see you next week.